But first, here's my take. In the midst of the blizzard of last minute tariff threats and trade deals, we're losing sight of the big story here. A seismic shift is taking place in world affairs. The United States, the creator and upholder of the open global economy, now is imposing its highest average tariff rate in nearly a century, the highest of any major economy in the world. The Trump administration is reversing 80 years of American economic and foreign policy, which consistently pushed countries to remove restrictions and taxes on trade. The effects of this policy revolution are not to be measured in today's stock prices, but rather in the kind of world that will emerge as a result. In announcing the deals, the White House has repeatedly boasted that Donald Trump has now opened up foreign markets to American goods, as if forcing open closed economies. Here are the facts. Before Trump's second term, the average tariff on American goods in the European Union was 1.35%, according to the European think tank Bruegel. The average American tariff on European Union goods was 1.47%. Even Japan, often seen as highly protectionist, had an average tariff on American goods that was around 3%, compared to an average American tariff on Japanese goods that was around 1.5%. In other words, we were living in a free trade world where tariffs were so small as to be largely irrelevant. And yes, other countries impose non-tariff barriers on American goods, but so do we. Markets might breathe a sigh of relief that the barriers are not nearly as high as Trump had proposed on Liberation Day, or they may react to the reality of permanent high tariffs. In any event, the American economy is largely domestic. In 2024, exports were worth less than 11% of U.S. GDP. In addition, the U.S. economy is now largely made up of services, with more than 80% of American non-farm jobs in the service sector: software, entertainment, tourism, finance, consulting, etc. In this, the fastest growing sector of the economy, the U.S. had a nearly $300 billion trade surplus in 2024. And it escapes virtually any tariffs because for Donald Trump, services don't really count. MAGA leaders have crowed that Trump has won the trade wars against the European Union, Japan, and South Korea. And it's true that Donald Trump recognized that America has special leverage against those countries because of the size of its market, as well as the security it provides to its allies. So he used that geopolitical reality at a time of rising geopolitical threats to squeeze America's closest friends to force them to make concessions. So tariffs on American goods in the EU will go from 1.35% to close to zero. But to view these small gains as great American victories misunderstands economics. No one wins a trade war. The United States is now burdening its own consumers with a highly regressive tax that is likely to hit the poor hardest. How is it a victory for the U.S. that low-income Americans will now pay a good bit more for food and clothes at places like Costco and Walmart? The broadest effect of these tariffs will be to change the basic structure of the world economy. For 80 years, countries have been moving away from arbitrary government involvement and interference in global markets. Throughout history, governments have manipulated trade, producing massive distortions, creating domestic champions that were politically powerful more than economically efficient. The U.S. pushed against those tendencies, demonstrating by its success that it had chosen the best path. American technology companies have come to dominate the world, learning from and besting what were once market leaders like Sony from Japan and Philips from the Netherlands in the 1980s and 90s, because it was a fiercely competitive global market. The world we're entering is different. Companies will now have to spend time and brainpower gaming the politics of the system. They will ship goods first to low-tariff countries and then to the U.S. They will under-invoice goods, which are tariffed, and over-invoice various processing fees, which are not. They will increase their lobbying efforts. Already, America's best companies routinely go to Washington for exemptions, carve-outs, and special favors. Businessmen who used to rail against taxes and regulations now cheer on as Trump's Washington dispenses favors and punishments. All governments love to have arbitrary power over the economy. It took 80 years of persistent American pressure to get them to yield to market forces so that civil society could gain ground against the state. The United States created a trading world in which countries had much to gain by staying at peace. It created an ecosystem in which liberal democracies were economically and geopolitically interdependent and intertwined. And now, America, the force that created this peaceful and prosperous world, is moving in the opposite direction.